Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. It's Friday. I figured we'd end the week by doing another fun video, and these tier lists have been pretty fun just to kind of go through memory lane and talk about different cards throughout Dragon Ball Super's history. So today we'll be doing a tier list for the most toxic ban cards in all of Dragon Ball Super. I was actually very surprised to learn, or I guess re-remember, that there are 28 banned cards in the game. Now keep in mind, this is only banned cards. This is not errated or limited cards. We'll probably do that in their own video because honestly 28 cards is a lot to talk about. And this does not include leaders because I did a whole video talking about leaders. You guys can check that out from just a few weeks ago. But we will get into this, guys. I'll be ranking them based on their toxicity and the format they were legal in, kind of the format that these cards defined, if any. And I'll also be considering how they would interact in the modern format. That's also going to play a role in the rank here. So, of course, in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree with my choices. Anyways, if you're new, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a Dragon Ball Super video. Let's get right into this. So, firstly, we are starting off with an absolute banger, Bad Ring Laser. So, if you guys don't know what this is the first counter of the game. Yellow was the only color that had access to a counter that could literally stop negates. And blockers weren't that good at that time. So, if you were stopping negates, you were getting in there for damage, especially because there weren't really many battle tricks that could actually stop battle cards, you know, during a battle or during the combo step. So Bad Ring Laser is definitely going into S tier, if for no other reason than the fact of the pairs, or I guess the triplets of this card plus Mirror Creator Absorb plus Champa. That was a guaranteed 2 damage for many formats. Factor in the Broly Awakened Threat Leader, and you're talking possibly 3 forced damage that your opponent could just do nothing to stop. That was actually a very unthing about that time in the Dragon Ball Super card game. So Bad Ring Laser definitely belongs in the S tier in my opinion. Then we have Barlock Progenitor. So this one's interesting because back during the Storm days, I felt like there were a lot of ways they could have given erratas to balance this, because the thing with Storm was all the cards in the deck were very good, but it's hard to say that one card was the problem versus the other, because first I believe they banned Scrambling Assault Son Goten, and the deck was still decent. It definitely, you know, took a big hit in consistency, but it took multiple hits for it to actually, you know, not be at top of the meta anymore. But I always thought they could have errated Barlock Progenitor to be like just a Goku lineage leader only type of card, and that would have made it a little bit less toxic. So I'm going to put an A tier for that reason. I don't think this card alone defined that format. Again, Storm was just an amalgamation of really good / broken cards. So Bardock goes in A tier in my opinion. Could probably come back. I don't think it would be too crazy in the modern format. Yellow would just have a Self Awakener that could recycle itself back to hand. It would be searchable. I think in certain decks it would be a strong card for its self-awakening purposes, not so much for its aggro capabilities, because at this day and age a 1-drop 10k is not that crazy of an aggro tool. But going to Bardock the Resolute. This one's also kind of interesting. So this card, amongst several others I will talk about, got the axe when Bandai was kind of pressured by the community, and rightfully so by the community, by the way. They were pressured into really dealing with this super aggressive red style that King Vegeta was kind of abusing. Bardock was a card that I believe was limited to 1 at first and then got banned, if I'm remembering that correctly. But yeah, this card, again, like an amalgamation of really powerful cards. Bardock maybe could have stayed around and not been too crazy because he has 0 combo power, which definitely helps balance the card. You can only have 1 in play. It's a black card. It's off color for the decks you'll be playing it in. So I feel like Bardock I'll maybe slant into B tier. It was a very good card, but even when I was at 1, it wasn't that crazy because most people only play 1. And I think the other cards that kind of surrounded Bardock in that strategy were a little bit more toxic. Beerus is another interesting one to talk about. So this card had potential to be very broken, but it never quite met that standard. And the real reason why it got hit was, I believe on the same ban list, they decided to hit the King Vegeta deck. They just wanted to really eliminate anything that was able to be played for free. And Beerus could have been really strong. Also, the Boo deck that came out in set 14 could have abused this card pretty significantly, because the Boo that would be played from the deck via Union Absorb would be able to discard a card to search a card, and then you could have just played Beerus for free. So because it never really had that crazy time in the limelight, there were times where this card was good, don't get me wrong. Like in Black Boo, I think in set 9 the card was decent, but it never really had that time to be like crazy. But it was more of like a preemptive ban than anything else. So I think for that reason, I'll slot it in C. I don't even think this card would be that crazy if it came back right now. There would be some cool decks where it would be neat, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I'm going to put Beerus in C for now. Maybe it can move to B later. But anyways, next up we have Belmond. So Belmond's a really interesting case because this card was absolutely garbage until it became abusable in a hyper aggro deck, because what it initially came out for was the Jiren successor strategy, where you could the whole idea of successors is to sacrifice your battle cards to play bigger battle cards, and Belmond essentially does that without being a multicolor card and without specifying certain costs to play. And in that case, it wasn't very good. You have to sacrifice 3 battle cards. You have to give up 3 cards just to play this guy, and then pop a battle card and maybe block an attack or attack for 20k. And in the Jiren deck itself, certain cards you would sacrifice would possibly get other effects, like make your opponent pitch a card, maybe draw a card, whatever, and that could be okay. But this card never really saw play until Dark Broly was able to abuse it, because they could play 3 battle cards for free. Belmond could sacrifice them, and then those battle cards could be replayed. So that was just an unintended interaction. And then you had the King Vegeta deck that could just spam out a board on turn 1, turn 2, and then just go into Belmond for free for more pressure. And if you're winning the game that turn, you didn't really care if Belmond sacrificed your whole board. So I almost want to put it in A tier because it wasn't very broken on release, and it wasn't really busted until kind of like its generic capabilities. Like, because it's not restricted to a certain type of leader or a certain type of card to sacrifice, that's where it kind of got out of hand. But I could definitely see this going into S tier because of the crazy stuff it facilitated. Like, you could also sacrifice unique cards and then replay unique cards. That was also another crazy interaction. So maybe this is S tier toxic because it just wasn't balanced properly with like foresight in mind. So maybe this goes into S tier for now. Violent Rush Bojack. This one is one that's very near and dear to my heart. I almost wish they didn't ban this, only because they also ended up erratating the Zamasu counterplay, and it really seemed like they killed Blue Yellow because of this. Maybe not entirely, because Soul Striker Blue Yellow is still doing well, but Yellow Blue Yellow, like with the yellow based leader, is not doing so hot because they just don't have access to as much energy. And if you errata Zamasu, I think you could have kept Bojack, or if you banned Bojack, you could have kept Zamasu unerrated, and one of them could have just been allowed to be the powerhouse for Blue Yellow. But yeah, this card was toxic. I think I'm gonna slot it into A tier because it wasn't a card that like straight up ended the game on its own, so I wouldn't necessarily put it in S tier for that reason. But it was a card that just made the blue yellow matchup feel like they were playing a different card game. Like, they just had free energy that cost them nothing. They had a big beefy battle card that had barrier, good protection. This card was very, very strong. I think A is probably a pretty appropriate ranking for Bojack here. Child's Wish, automatic S tier. This card is absolutely incredibly toxic. Maybe even in front of S tier. I'm not sure if it's going to be in front of or behind Battering Laser. But the thing with Child's Wish, this is a time of the game where I don't think we even really knew what the game was supposed to be as the players. I think we kind of are figuring that out more so in the Unison Warrior block. But Child's Wish just facilitated the most insane things. First of all, Wish was just crazy. Wish giving you the ability to use these extra cards for free, and most of these wishes or desires had the ability to revive things from the drop. That was just a if the designers could go back, I bet you they wish they never even created Wish, with the way that the game is starting to go now and the way that they've gotten feedback about how we like to play the game. Like, look at the modern Wish decks. They don't do these types of free things. They have some strong effects, don't get me wrong, like Machikabura and Yellow Goku Black, but they do not do Child Wish type of things. Like, this card was super toxic. Needless to say, it was a main deck staple that basically facilitated the entire Super Shenron deck. So yeah, automatic S tier for sure. Legendary Flute, another interesting case. This card is going to go into S tier, and I feel like if you're a more modern player, don't really know what the Flute format was all about, you're not going to understand this. But for being a 0 energy card that allows you to recycle one of your own battle cards back to your hand and then draw a card, that was just so broken for its time. I feel like this could even be kind of insane in this current format if there were valuable targets to recycle and just replay. I could possibly think of a few off the top of my head, but yeah, Flute was just insanely broken for the fact that it filtered through your deck. It was a 0 cost. It was in blue, which at that time, blue was just the de facto best color. There was no two ways about it. So Flute definitely belongs in S tier for toxicity, in my opinion. Force Ejection Mass Sand. Alright, I feel like I should talk about this and Begrudging Piccolo at the same time because they're essentially the same card. They basically punish ramp-style decks, and I'm still a little bit surprised as to why they banned them. I think they also took a hit because there was like this Ultimate Deck Vegeta leader that would like replace the energy, and we've seen a more similar leader more recently with the SS2 Gohan leader from I think set 11 or 12. But yeah, I believe these also hit leaders that manipulate their energy, not just ramp their energy, so maybe they're just worded a bit poorly, and I guess they didn't want to punish ramp so severely. What was also kind of funny was that with Force Ejection Mass Sand, I believe the case was if your opponent ramped or just was ahead of you in energy, you could actually double force ejection them in the same turn, because at the time you use force ejection effect, it didn't care how much energy they had. It checked their energy at the start of the turn, if I'm remembering that correctly, because there was a deck in set 4 that me and my local friends played that was able to consistently double force ejection someone in the same turn. That was pretty crazy, but I guess it ended up not taking off. So I think for toxicity purposes, I'll put it in B tier. Like, it is kind of annoying that it can interact with decks that just manipulate the energy, not ramp. That is kind of probably an unintended annoyance, but still, it is kind of nice to have ramp answers, and I wish we did have more. I guess we still have Dende because it's a more expensive answer and they wanted it to not be so cheap. But yeah, in my opinion, B tier seems pretty appropriate. Gogeta 7, man, automatic S tier again. If you guys didn't play while this card was legal, count your blessings, because this card just made the game honestly so unbearable. And I know there are so many people that share that sentiment. I know there are so many people that want this card back. I couldn't tell you why, but this card was just the definition of unfun in this game. Maybe next to the Super Shenron deck. Just like deflect barrier, you could never interact with it, and then it would take your hand, put it back into your deck, you shuffle and draw 3 random cards. Couple that with the Shenron leader that would give this thing triple attack, so triple attack, triple strike, potentially crit with Shenron Figure of Majesty, and you were just not playing the game. It was super, super toxic. Son Goku Power of Legend, probably slotting it in right with Bardock the Resolute, because they're such similar cards. I think honestly Power of Legend was maybe a little bit more toxic, because in the Cell Surge deck this card was super annoying. Like, they could take your hand to near 0 and they had multiple crit threats to just keep whittling you down. But with that in mind, outside of the Cell Surge deck, this card was just like kind of mediocre at best, so I would probably go B tier. You know, medium level annoyance, nothing more than that. Then we have minus Killizone, again, another S tier toxic card. This one's kind of funny because this card was legal right when we got like more counterplays. So, you know, we had been begging for answers to cards like Gogeta 7, and we had gotten Mutaito, Skill of a Sage, as a promo. And it was okay. It wasn't amazing, but like, it would put Gogeta in rest mode, so at least that very turn you wouldn't die to Gogeta 7. But then like minus Killizone was still legal for one tournament that Mutaito came out in, so it wasn't even very effective in that tournament. But then it got banned, which was definitely for the best. This card's super toxic. Not being able to interact with your opponent is definitely not the way to play this game, at least for a fun way to play it, at least. No Escape Son Goku, this card's pretty funny. I think I'm gonna just put it in D tier because this card never actually had a relevant impact on the format. There were some cute things I think you could do, because I believe it also restricted you from bouncing battle cards back to your hand. And there were some cute things you could do by cheating certain costs with certain battle cards. But the reason this card got banned was because they started printing archetypes, like the Janemba archetype in I think set 12 or so, that needed to bounce cards back to its own hand in order to play new cards. So they banned No Escape Goku just so that it wouldn't interact with those types of decks. But real quick, just thinking about it, I kind of want to move the anti-ramp cards down here, because I talked about these two cards, Bardock and Goku, being like minor annoyances. I don't think anyone really minded the fact that Force Ejection and Piccolo existed. Like, I guess Shenron ramp players didn't like it, but I mean, it's the answer to their deck, so of course they're not going to like it. But anyways, we'll get through the last 14 cards here, but real quick, we do have a word from today's video's sponsor. Yo, Dragon Ballers, real quick, I need to let you guys know about 2 events that are coming up soon, being hosted by PPG. All the info will be down in the description, but we have the Dragon Ball Super Card Game Fest from March 26th to the 27th. This is going to be the first ever event where they are trying out the sideboarded best of 1 format. Besides that, it'll just be a celebration of the Dragon Ball Super Card Game, so you're not going to want to miss it. The other one is for organized play through the Pro Play Tour. We have the regional qualifier April 2nd in Kentucky, shots to the Midwest, so you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Shout out to PPG because they run awesome tournaments, but also besides that, this is the thing I've been concerned about in the past, where these tournaments just don't get enough advertisement. So shout out to PPG for doing more and putting in more work to advertise these events. I hope to see you guys there. Let's get back into the video. Alright guys, shout out to PPG. Let's get back into this. We're about halfway done here. A little bit of a longer video today, but should be fun to listen to on a car ride or something. But anyways, we have Objection. Okay, this card was mediocre to good for a long time while it was legal, but once we had Nats Year 2 and Super Shenron, or regular Shenron ramp became a thing, this card did become super, super degenerate. So I kind of want to slot it in A tier, because again, most of its existence, it was a mediocre card. There was a format where it was severely broken, again, in conjunction with other cards. World Peace was a huge thing there, as well as the Shenron leader. And I think in modern format, I don't think Objection would actually be that crazy. Like, taking a -1, even though it is for a ramp, that is a powerful effect. Taking that -1 in today's metagame is definitely pretty significant. So I think A tier toxicity level is pretty appropriate for Objection. Pan the Grave Whisperer, I think this one belongs in A. I think this one's an underrated A tier. I think a lot of people would probably slot it into B for being a minor annoyance. There was only 2 formats where this was good. The first one being when it came out, where the yellow baby deck was actually just bonkers insane. Then Surge Goku came out and gave that deck a good check, which was good. But yeah, Pan was absolutely broken in that deck, just being able to swing multiple times with your Heartfelt Plea. And then in the Sin Shenron aggro deck, being able to play Cell Zeno on turn 2 and give it dual attack essentially, that was really insane. But I think A tier is pretty appropriate considering that it was kind of a short case usage where Pan was kind of insane. So I think A tier is pretty okay. Player for Destruction was another preemptive ban, but I think a pretty appropriate one because at the time they banned this, they were coming out with a lot of new ramp cards and I believe also a Zamasu archetype, so they didn't want that whole archetype to have that much ramp going for them. So I think this might be an appropriate B tier, even though it was a preemptive ban and while it was legal, no one found it that intolerable. But I think if it would have been legal with all the new cards like Zeno Cosmic Unison and Zeno Super Combo, I do think that this would have been a really, really bad time in the format. So I think B tier makes that pretty appropriate. TN Shinhan. Wow, the card that doesn't allow blue to untap. This is one of the craziest blue servo bullets ever. This one might slot right into S tier because of that. There was a crazy interaction where if you played Super Shenron and you played this card against a blue deck, your opponent would not be able to untap for 3 turns. 2 of your turns, and then their next turn. This card is absolutely snapped in half broken. Made blue unplayable for a very, very long time, which is funny because before this card came out and for the first like 4 sets of the game, blue was the best color. You had to play a blue leader to be truly competitive, and then this card came out, made blue unplayable for a pretty good while. I guess next up we should talk about the Tau that is kind of just the counterpart to TN. This card was a pretty fair answer to hand control in my opinion. Hand control wasn't all that crazy in that meta, but once Blue Green Piccolo came out, it definitely got a lot stronger and it was really nice to have Tau in your side deck. But then it kind of like came about that Tau would also punish you for counterplaying. Like let's say I was playing a red deck and I used an Isle of Hope. That would trigger Tau because the battle card would never actually hit the board. So it would consider, the game would consider it a card going from hand to drop. So once Tau kind of negatively interacted with counterplays in that way, that's when it became pretty toxic. So I think for that reason, I'm going to put it in B because for what it was intended, I think it was a very, very good card that Bandai came out with. I know a lot of people disagree because it punishes the opponent for playing hand control very, very severely. But we have cards like that now, like with Deborah. I guess albeit Deborah is probably less frustrating for hand control players to deal with than Tau is. But I think B might be appropriate. A could possibly be a good one. I think a lot of these are interchangeable in a few different ways. But anyways, then we have Roshi Kamehameha Origins. This card, I kind of want to put it in C because at the time it was banned. I mean, it was totally unnecessary. This is where all the memes come from, where Bandai just likes to hate on green for no reason because green wasn't all that good in the meta that this card got banned. But I guess there were enough people complaining about green decks being able to recycle Dormant Potential Unleashed that Bandai decided to drop the ban hammer anyway. Don't get me wrong, it was very annoying to see green Gotenks constantly recycle Dormant and just like sometimes seemingly never die. But, I mean, green didn't really have anything else going for it, so banning this card at the time didn't really make all that much sense, so I think C tier is pretty appropriate. I mean, if green ever becomes, like, super busted, Roshi can be severely, severely annoying, so I could see that being a thing. But, yeah, for now, C tier seems kind of appropriate. Shugesh, 110% S tier. This card got a lot more easy to deal with once we got Cronoa. Like, people stopped playing it as much, but they ended up just banning the card outright, mostly for team format because there was a 2 in 3 chance you'd be playing against a person without Cronoa, and if you were playing the Broly deck or the yellow deck with Shugesh at the time, you'd be able to just have a huge, massive advantage. And then it basically just eliminated the need to play Cronoa in general once they banned Shugesh. But Shugesh being a set 3 super combo that played a battle card for free, one of those battle cards being able to pop a battle card during battle, this card was absolutely broken. This is a card that you would honestly expect to see like maybe during the set 13 days, like set 13-14 era, where free play was a little bit more free range. But yeah, this card came out in set 3 and it was absolutely broken. Then we have Tau. So another red aggro tool, similar to Bardock, similar to Belmond, because they both kind of, facilitated or were played in the same deck. I think Tau might go on into A tier. Again, I think this is another kind of just like oversight on Bandai's part where they could have balanced this a lot better. They could have just limited it to like an Earthling leader or requiring 3 red Earthlings in play, because this came out at the same time as like the Pilaf deck, so they could have easily just made it a bit more balanced by making it less generic, but they didn't. So I guess in terms of toxicity for the King Vegeta turn 2, turn 1 kill deck, I guess Belmond ranks highest, Tau is next, because like Belmond could facilitate you playing multiple Taus, and then I guess Bardock would be the least toxic out of that crew, which I think makes sense actually. And then we have Trunks. So Trunks recently got banned, or I guess will be banned in set 16, because it's a card that allows Gogeta Zeno to prosper a little bit too much. Like, I think the community generally agrees that Gogeta Zeno is not that broken of a deck, especially compared to like Dark Broly and Vegex of the past. But they wanted to nerf Gogeta Zeno in some slight ways, which makes sense. And Trunks was one of those ways to do that, because they could add it to hand for free by warping it with their leader ability. So with that in mind, I don't think Trunks was very high toxicity level. I think I'm going to slot it in C, because it was a very, very good card in Gogeta Zeno, don't get me wrong. But the rest of the card's existence, I believe it came out in set 3. It never really did much at all in the game. It just got good when Gogeta Zeno started abusing it. And even when it was good, it wasn't really all that frustrating. But I still think it's a good hit to Gogeta Zeno, just like nerf their power a little bit. Annealing Spirit Trunks, automatic S tier again. This card's super broken. Shout out to Trey, because I know Trey wants this card back in the game because he loves blue and loves untapping. But yeah, I mean, this is another taste of what we got in the early days of the game, where we didn't really know how we wanted the game to be. The game was a lot faster back then in a lot of ways, and we had lots of free play and lots of energy manipulation. Again, this is another reason why blue was just one of the automatic best colors, because they had a card that when you comboed, you would just untap an energy. I don't think any other color had a card nearly comparable to this, which is kind of wild. Then I guess we can talk about Turles and Negrishi in the same vein, because I'm using Negrishi to represent all of the Universe 3 cards. And yes, Negrishi, and I think it was Viara, was the 4-drop one. They were the best ones by far, because they were the most abused in the Vegex deck when Vegex first came out. But overall, I mean, the U3 cards all do the same thing. They all got banned for the same reason. So yeah, Negrishi probably going in, I want to say S tier. Like, they were, again, like when a deck is broken in Dragon Ball, it's usually because it's an amalgamation of severely busted cards, not because it's just one super broken card. And like all the other stuff in the Vegex deck was really strong. Like Vegex milling his time patrols into play allowed you to put Negrishi and Viara in play and just be super aggressive that way. So it wasn't the U3 cards' faults on their own, but the fact that they were literally free battle cards, and they also worked rather well with Bardock the Resolute and Goku Power of Legend. That was another interaction that made them very strong. So probably S tier for that reason. Turles, I think same thing. I think S tier, because this card worked wonders literally on its own. It was a really broken free play in black that just got 2 attacks off turn 1, and then any subsequent turn after that. And then it actually had cool synergy with like Beerus, for example, because you could discard to restand Turles and then play Beerus. So this card facilitated a lot of really degenerate strategies. It was really broken aggro. Definitely needed to be banned. Then we have Violent Predator. So this card got banned before the Unison Warrior block, because Bandai wanted to push monocolor types of strategies, and Violent Predator just like destroyed any monocolor deck, because it was an 8-drop that would be played in a blue-green ramp deck, and it would just shuffle all your monocolor cards back into your deck, energy, field, everything. That was obviously severely broken. They wanted to push monocolors, so they decided to ban it. Again, this was like a preemptive ban, but this was actually a pretty toxic card if you were playing like Hachiyak in that Surge Piccolo format, or any, you know, multicolor deck, monocolor deck in that time, even though there weren't really many monocolor decks that were viable. So I think this one might go in A tier, because again, it was toxic in that format for that matchup, and this would be super toxic in Unison Warrior block, because blue-green was pretty decent for some of the Unison Warrior block, and anytime blue-green was decent, they had an automatic win con against monocolor decks, which would have been kind of crazy. And then we have Zeno Button. This card, I think, is probably our last entry into S tier. Most of its existence, again, wasn't very good, but it started being really strong when Hercule came out, I believe after set 4 with the World Tournaments side set. Very, very good in Hercule, because it was a blue leader that could untap, a red leader that could untap all of its blue energy, and that deck thrived in the combo step. And then with multicolor, blue-yellow in particular, Zeno Button was absolutely ridiculous, giving you all your energy back, letting you do things like Raider's Warcry, Bergamo, like all these psychotic, insane cards. So Zeno Button probably goes in S tier. Just a quick review of what we talked about. Looking at S tier, this all looks pretty good. Again, Belmond may be questionable just because of how bad it was on release, but it ended up being so broken before it was banned. Definitely an interesting look there. The rest of that seems good. Going through A tier, yeah, Bardock, I don't think I would slot in S. This all looks good to me in A tier. I can even see Tao maybe going to B, but it was very, very strong in the King Vegeta deck. Then we have B. So yeah, these cards, minor annoyances, or could have been if they had been left unchecked in the place of Plan for Destruction. C tier, yeah, these cards never really had their time to truly shine, but they definitely were somewhat warranted for their bans in some cases, more so not so much. Then we have No Escape Goku. This card could have been rather toxic if those decks that it was able to counter were really good, but they ended up just not being that great. Like the Janemba deck just never really was that great. Honestly, this could probably just go in C, and then D could just get deleted. Is that a thing I could do now? Yeah, so delete that, and then we just have S, A, B, and C. And this makes sense to me. I actually like the way this looks a lot. So, yeah, I guess we didn't need the whole D tier that video. But anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with my list? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.